Hello, this is a walkthrough of basic circulation functions within Sierra. Um, Please note that what you see on the screen right now might be a little different as to the way your library is set up. This is the basic screen for the SDA or the Sierra desktop application. A couple things to note. So up here at the top, this is the main menu, and it allows you to close out. There's a couple shortcuts that we'll be using to go through from one item or patron to another, or even to bring up different tools. Over on the right-hand side is the function drop-down box. This is pretty important, and yours is probably going to look a little bit different than what I have here on my screen. So not all libraries will have all of these different options. Yours may only have a few cataloging and a few circulation. You might not even see administration or ERM or any of these other options. But this is the main source of navigation for Sierra. So just to do some general searching, to place holds, to find items, you'll want to be in the default cataloging function. So over here we have our main search engine. Depending upon your library setup, the default may be titled, but it also may be barcode or it may be keyword. So this shows you all the different indexes that you can use to search on. So if you have a specific title, you can do even a keyword under title is fine. So I'm just going to hit search, and all of the facets and results are going to show. One thing to note is, as you probably are aware, that this version of Sierra is shared by the WSPLS Consortium. So there are 11 different colleges that have items in this catalog. So when you do search by title, you are going to see results from all 11 libraries. You can limit that over here in the facets. You can go under locations. If you know you're limiting just to your location, you can select it over here, and that will apply to the results. You can just double click on a result that you want, and that is going to open up the item view. Up at the top, we have a brief bib section, so that's going to show us things like author, title, location. If we need to find out or look at more detail, we can come over here and click view or edit. If the edit is grayed out, that means you don't have access to edit the bib record, but you can always view it. So when you click on that, we get the detailed mark view. And this can be helpful if you're helping a patron, a student, or a professor, and you need more detail maybe in the notes field or something like that. Once you are done looking at the bib record, you can either click on summary, which will take us back to the previous view, or you can click on close. I'm going to go back to summary. And we're going to see here that we're looking at everything below here is attachments to the bib record. So we're looking at, if I click on the summary tab, we'll see here, and then under view, the default is item, but we can look at all attached records. So this particular record only has an item record attached to it. You may see bib records that have multiple items attached to it. You may see records that have holdings attached or order records attached. It all depends on the type of the type of item that it is. Order records will just show that an item was purchased through Sierra and a record was created. Holdings records will show journal entries and so forth. So over here under the records tab, we're going to look at that specific record that was highlighted, and this shows us detailed information about this one specific item. So scrolling down to the bottom, we can see the call number, we can see the barcode, You can see who owns it, the item agency, the last time it was checked out, total checkouts, and then we can also see the location, where this item is physically located at. We can also see over here item level holds and bib level holds. The difference between these two, item level holds are going to show holds that are specifically on this one particular item, where a bib level hold is going to be holds that any item that is connected to this bib record will suffice and fulfill that hold. So those are the main differences, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later when we actually place holds. So this is how you can actually search for a record and bring it up. I'm going to close out of this record by clicking on the close in the upper right-hand corner, and that's going to take us back to our original screen. Now, one of the things that you will probably do quite a bit is look up items by barcode. Now, if you notice when we click on the drop-down index box, all of these indexes have a letter in front of them. You can, instead of selecting one of those, you can just type, so I want to use barcode, so I'm just going to key in a B, and it automatically changed to barcode. And then the index insertion point went over to the search field, and I can immediately then scan my item barcode. So I've done that, I've scanned the item barcode, and then it's going to automatically search. So because I scanned a specific barcode, it should bring up the one record. We shouldn't have any duplicates, so it should go straight to the one record. And similarly to the record we just looked at, we have a brief bib record, and then because we searched a very specific item record, it defaulted and showed that specific item record. Now, the other thing that I wanted to point out is oftentimes when working within Sierra, each record, every single record that has been created within Sierra, whether it's a bib record, an item record, a patron record, a holdings record, an invoice, every single thing has a very specific record number. And that record number is never repeated. In each one, so for instance, with bib records, all bib records are going to start with a B. So you see right here, this bib record is B123373116. This is something that occasionally you'll see Sierra will produce this specific number, and that's what it means. It means it's tied to a very specific record. Item records all have those as well. Those all start with an I. Holdings all start with a C. Invoices I. Patrons P. You can also, if you have that particular record number, you can actually use it to search. So I'm just going to copy this one, this I record I have, this I number, excuse me, I have it highlighted. I'm going to copy it. I'll close out of it. And then over here, you can actually scroll down, or if you know it's a period, you can just type a period and it's going to select record number, and then you can actually enter it in here. And now it brings it directly to this particular item. And you can do the same thing with a barcode, or excuse me, a bib record or a patron record. If you have that P number, that B number, that I number, you can search based on those as well. All right, I'm going to close out of this, and now we're going to go over into look at patron records. So in order to bring up and look at patron records and actually check items out, we need to change the function. So over in the function drop-down box in the upper right-hand corner, we want to scroll up and go to the circulation section and select checkout. And I'm going to click on that, and now we have a completely different view. We still have the search box in the upper left-hand corner, but this time we don't have an index. However, so you can scan a barcode if the patron has their ID card or their barcode. You can scan that. The other thing that you can do is search based upon name. So because this one isn't giving us a specific index immediately, you can actually type in N for name, and then the patron's last name, and then the first name. And this is going to bring up the record right away. I'm actually going to close this out, and I'm going to also show you an option here. So I didn't put anything into the search box, and I just clicked search because I wanted to show you that you can actually bring up a box with multiple indexes. So if you don't remember that you have to use a name, the N for name, I wanted to show you can also actually get the option to select a barcode, that record number, which I was talking about, that P or I or B number, the name, or even the institution ID. So I don't have a card with me, so I'm going to just, again, type in the name. And it immediately takes me to the patron record. So this is just a test record. So you're probably going to see something with a lot more information when you're working with actual patrons. But I want to go through all of this with you. So similarly to the bib and item view, with a patron, you have some of those fixed fields, the information of the patron up here at the top. Now this is a brief view, and depending upon your school, this may look a little bit different as well. Each school is able to modify what they actually have showing up here. So what I have and what you have might look a little bit different. So looking at this, we can actually come up here just like with a bib record, and we can either view or edit to look at this information a little bit more in detail. So I'm going to go ahead and click on edit. Now this is showing me a lot more information about this patron. I'm going to expand the view here. All right, so we have quite a bit of information here about this patron. You can see here we have, there's an option for an expiration date. There's a patron type. This is really important. The patron type is what one of the main things that really tells the system how a patron can use the system. So it really defines a lot of access. It defines a lot of like checkout times, fines, and so forth. Right below that is total checkout. This is just a running checkout of how many physical items the patron has checked out. We also have total renewals, current checkout, birth date, home library, and depending upon where you're at and where your patrons are at, this could vary a little bit from location to location, especially some of the schools that have multiple locations. You may have patrons or students come into your library that their home library is one of another one of your schools. Patron message. This is both patron message and manual block are things that you will want to pay attention to because these can restrict or prevent patrons from doing things within Sierra. So a patron message, if you click on that, we have a couple of different options here. So no message just means that there's no message, the patron's fine. On the fly is something that if a patron record was created, but there's more information to collect, it's not fully cataloged, so to speak, it would have a status of on the fly. I don't think many libraries use this a lot, but that's typically what it means. Check address phone means that you need to actually check with the patron to verify the address and the phone number because perhaps what you have on file is not the accurate one. Some libraries use equipment agreement sign. This means that you have an agreement that you require students to sign before they're allowed to check out any equipment. There are some other things in here that just not every library uses these, but some libraries do. So I'm going to just cancel out of these. Now, if a patron has a patron message, and I'm actually going to go back and I'll just select one. So let's just say this patron has signed the equipment agreement. And then we'll go back in and I'll show how this actually appears in the record. The other thing that I wanted to point out is a manual block. So right now we have no manual block. But we have a couple other options that you may come across. Again, not all libraries use these, but yours perhaps does. So there might be a billed or withdrawn item, or there might even be something like C supervisor. So I'm going to select that. Now coming down a little bit further, we have money owed. Here, if any money is shown here, it typically appears in red, and it will show you if the patron owes any money at all. We also have over on the right-hand side a couple more codes that are pretty important. So patron agency, again, that just tells us who this patron belongs to. One thing to note, if you're modifying a patron record and you accidentally change a patron agency to a library location that is not yours, you will not be able to, you will no longer be able to look at this patron's record. So the way the system is set up, that if you bring up a patron record or try to access a patron record that doesn't belong to your library or one of your library locations, you won't be able to view that record. So keep that in mind. Okay, last search activity is just that that's the last time they checked out a physical item. And then down below we have some more free text fields, and that is patron name, address. You'll typically see a phone number. Institution ID and barcode are typically the same number, and then we have an email on file. All right, I am actually going to save. We have a close option. We can delete the patron. We can also insert a field up here, and what that means, if I click on that, that's going to allow us to add in more free text fields. So we have an index over here. So for instance, in this record, we don't have a telephone number. So we could add a telephone number, and I'll just type in a number here, say okay, and it's going to insert it down here. It immediately puts it at the top, but when we close it out, it'll reorder it. So I made some changes to this particular record. I added a patron message, a manual block, and a phone number. So if I click on close, it's going to pop up and say, hey, are you sure you made some changes? Otherwise, I can hit save and close. But I'm going to hit close so you can see what it looks like. It says record has been changed. Do you want to save changes? I'm going to say yes, and then it's going to close it out. And then it takes me back to my previous view. But what I want to show you are how the changes that I made affect what the record looks like. So I'm going to close out of this record as well. And then I want to go back into that record. So I could rescan, or I could retype a name, or we have another option. We can go up here to File and look at Recent Patrons. And you will have a list of recent patrons. The length of the list depends upon how your login was set up. So you may only see the recent 5 patrons. You may see the most recent 25 patrons. It depends upon how your account and login were set up. So I'm going to click on my most recent one, and note I have that patron message says the equipment agreement was signed. And I'm going to say, okay. The other thing that I did put in here was a patron block. So note that that did not come up. However, if I try to check an item out, I could potentially be prevented from doing so because of that block. So what I want to do now is, so you have the patron record up, and we can actually check materials out. So just as the search box says, you can key or scan items. And so I'm just going to put in the item that we had. And oops, I made a mistake. I thought I had the barcode. So I'm going to look for that. All right, so I had to go back and get a barcode. And now I have one, so I can scan that. And you'll see that now that I've tried to check an item out, it has popped up and said this borrow cannot check out the item because, and then it's showing us that patron block, see supervisor. So again, depending upon your settings, you may or may not be able to override this. So my login right now has the option to override it. So I can say override, or I cannot override it, tell the patron, I'm sorry, we need to do A, B, and C because for some reason this patron's record is blocked. So what I'm going to say right now is do not override. And then I'm going to go back into the record because perhaps I've looked into it and it was a mistake. So I can click on here and then I can just say no block, click OK. I'm going to save my changes and close out this box. And now I'm going to try to check out that patron record one more time. Or excuse me, check out that item one more time. And immediately now that that block has been removed, I have it listed here under checkout. So I have the barcode, the title, and the due date. The due date is going to be an automatically configured date. However, there may be some circumstances where you do have to change that due date. You would want to check with your library if for some reason you need to do that. But otherwise, the default will be configured based upon the loan rule that's already set and configured within the system. So now a couple other things that I wanted to mention about this record. So we have the option while we're in a patron record to place a hold. So there's a couple of different ways that we can do this for a patron, and there's a couple of different reasons why you would want to place a hold. The main reason is that the item is checked out and it's unavailable for the patron to get right now. Or perhaps the patron is calling and they want the item and they won't be able to pick it up for a couple of days because they're not on campus. And so they want the hold to be placed and pulled for them for when they come on campus. If a patron has contacted you, or maybe they're in person and they want to place a hold, but the item isn't available, what you can do is click on the Holds tab here, and you can actually then add a hold from the patron record. So I'm going to click on Add Holds, and we get the search tool to search for either a title, barcode, whatever index we choose. So for this instance, we're going to go ahead and just search based on a title because we don't maybe have a specific barcode. So I'm going to type in behave yourself, and I'm going to search based on that. And here we have our search results. And it immediately, because there was only one bib record with that title, it immediately took us into that bib record. If we're searching on a title that has multiple bib records, we would then have to select a bib record in order to view, and most likely it would be based upon our location. So this title is owned by just one library, and so we have two different items attached. We can see that down here, make this a little bit bigger. So here we have the different items that are available. We can see that one is available and one is checked out. So we have an option here where we can do a bib level hold or an item level hold. So by doing a bib level hold, like I mentioned before, if you do a bib level hold, the hold can be fulfilled by any one of the items attached to that bib record. However, if we went and if we're looking and trying to place a hold on a journal, so each journal is a different volume. So that's where an instance where we would definitely want to place an item level hold, because maybe we only want journal volume 3, edition 4 or whatever. So we want a very specific holding. But with this case, it's the same book, and we can just place a bib level hold. So I'm going to say, look at the bib level hold. You can also, like I had mentioned before, you can look at item level holds. But coming back to the summary tab, we have a couple of options. So you can say hold selected item. This one is available, so you could place a hold on that particular item. However, like I mentioned before, we want to do a bib level hold. So we're going to hold copy returned soonest, meaning any of those items will suffice. So we're going to click on that. And then we get this pop-up box, and it's asking us to place a title or a bib level hold. The default pickup location will be the location of the patron. So whatever patron agency that the patron has in their record is going to be the pickup location. We do have a couple of options. We can put in a not wanted before or a not wanted after date, and even a hold note. That hold note will pop up when the patron, it'll pop up in the patron record, so you can see if there's any specific information. So I'm just going to leave it as default, click OK, and then now we have a title paging option. You are only going to see the title paging option if there are items that are currently available. So because this one item is available, we want to select page for title. If we say do not page for title, this hold will not appear on the paging list that we create, and we won't know to go into the stacks and pull the item for this patron. You will not get this title paging option if all items are checked out. So if there are no items available, we won't have this option, because it's not going to appear on the title paging list because we can't pull it. So what's going to happen is when the item is returned, we're going to get a note when we're checking that item in that says this item needs to be put on the hold shelf for this patron. So I'm going to say go ahead and page for title. That closes it out. It closes the bib out, and now it takes us back to the patron record, and you can see on the holds here, it's under barcode because we did a bib level or a title level hold. It just says copy return soonest. If we did do an item level hold, that specific item barcode would be listed here. Same with the call number. The specific item call number and location would appear. But this is just a general bib level hold, so all we really see is the title and the pickup location. We do have a couple options though. If for some reason we decided, you know what, this is for a paper, the student does not need this after a certain date, we can modify the hold, and you get this pop-up box again, and you can add a not wanted after or even a not wanted before date. So if they're not able to come into the library to pick the item up for 2 weeks, you could say not wanted before. So that's how you place a hold from a patron record. I'm going to close out of this. And then, so we closed out of the patron record, and I'm going to go back to search for a particular item. So I'm going to go back to function catalog, and I'm just going to select nursing. That was the last thing I had searched on. So I want to show you how from a item or bib record you can place a hold for a patron. So you don't have to start in the patron record in order to place a hold. You can actually place a hold for a patron or multiple patrons from the bib or item view. So let's just go ahead and select this one. And I can select either, I can place item level holds or I can place bib level holds. You can see for both of these items there are no holds. So what I'm going to do is I'll click on bib level hold, and here we have an add patron button. So very similarly to when we were going through the patron record, we had an add item button to place a hold from a patron record. So from an item record, we have an add patron. So I'm going to click on add patron, and here we can scan a patron, or we can change it and we can look it up by name. Okay, so this is telling me it's not holdable by patron. Now the reason it's not holdable by this particular patron is because I'm going to say to not override. This is an item that is not owned by one of the, by this patron's home library. So the patron that we were looking at is from Gateway. This item is from Midstate. And so the patron can't check it out. So we need to find an item that is, I'm going to close out of this, go back to search, that is owned by the library. So this is a good example of how we can then use the facets to form our search. So I'm coming over here. I just did a nursing title search, which is very, very broad. We have a lot of different options. And I'm going to come down here to locations, and we'll see here under Gateway Elkhorn, there's 58 results. And I'll select one of these. Okay, so this item is actually not available. So it's checked. Oh, it's the one I have checked out. Let's go back. I'm going to go over here to browse, and that's going to take us back to our browse. And we will check out, let's check out this one. All right, so this item is checked out, but we want to place a hold on it. So we're going to go and look at bib level holds. Again, click on add patron. It will show the most recent patron that you had searched on. And so it'll default with whatever name or barcode that you had put in there. This will only show within the session. So once you completely close out of Sierra, those defaults, those last searches that we went through, those will all go away. So I'm going to click here. I'm going to say, okay, my defaults are fine. And now we have it listed here. So now if we close out of this, go back to checkout, and then we look up that patron again, we should see that we now have two holds. So equipment agreement signed, yes, that was our patron message. We'll acknowledge that. And now we'll click over here on holds, and you can see that we have two holds placed. So that is placing holds. Now, the other thing that we want to quickly go through is checking materials in. All right, so we need to close out of this patron record, and we're going to actually change functions now. So under circulation, we want to go and select check-in. So this is a new view. Again, we have a search field, and then we have a just a listing of a couple of things, not a whole lot. So we have the option to backdate. Every library is going to be a little bit different on their policies on backdating. You can change this so that you can backdate a week. So if perhaps you have the option to drop materials off while, so patrons can return materials while your library is closed, you can backdate. So if you're closed for a weekend and you're checking in materials on a Monday, you can backdate and say that everything was returned on Friday. And that what that does is that prevents any fines that would normally be accrued over the weekend from being added to the patron's account. So I'm going to just scan a barcode. All right, let's try that again. I'm going to scan the barcode, and search. And you'll see that it shows us here the item information. If the item was overdue and checked in, there would be an amount due here. That could be a fine, or it could be a billing amount. That again depends upon your library. So how it's set up at your library, how if the item is overdue, or even at billed status, that would all depend. The other thing that you can do before checking items in, you can actually check this box to waive charges on items being checked in. That would only, again, that would be a policy issue within your library, and you may not even have this option. Again, that depends on settings of your particular login. So the other thing that I wanted to note, if we checked this item in and it did have a hold on it, we would then get a pop-up box saying, this item has a hold on it for this patron. Do you want to fulfill that? And we could say yes or no. And that would automatically put that item on the hold shelf for that new patron. I'm going to close out of this, and that's going to close us out of this particular view. And I did want to note under the function, so again, as I mentioned at the beginning, all these functions that you see under My Login are going to be very different from what you see in. So we were going through and searching for items under the cataloging function, but it may be possible that you don't have anything under this cataloging function and you only have circulation. So if you want to look up any items, you can do the same exact thing under the search and hold. So notice this is the same exact view as catalog. So again, we'll have search and view. The only difference is, again, it depends on your login, whether or not you're able to look at local or remote databases. So you may not have that catalog function, but you can use the search and holds as well. So that is just some really basic looking up items, looking up patrons, checking out, checking in, and placing holds within Sierra.